Greetings and namaste, beautiful souls. I'm so happy to be here with you. Welcome to Yoga PodClass. I'm here today with Katie Pudwill with Grow RDH, and we are talking about breathing through it and the forgotten power of nasal breathing and why it's so important. I'm Chelsie Lael Kennedy, founder of EEL Health and Wellness Aegis, here to inspire you to find your light in the dark and the hidden wisdom and creativity and gems there through a conscious relationship with your breath. Walking through this episode, I invite you to notice your breath. Take that breath with me. Tune in as we dial it in. Slow down the pace and the breath. In the Yoga Sutras 2:49 and 53, Patanjali teaches us that when breath is regulated, the veil over consciousness lifts. Modern science calls this neuroplasticity, and that's the brain's ability to reshape itself with each breath. Diving in, as you know, one of the things I love to do is link modern science with the ancient yogi philosophy. And this really is exciting because we're going to tie in how nasal breathing actually affects our oral health, which actually affects our overall health in such an expansive way. And I'm so excited to have Katie on the call today to really talk about the specifics that happen when we aren't breathing through our nose, and what that looks like inside of our mouth and for our overall health. So, as we get going today, um, we'll just dive in. That option and invitation to breathe, right? Find length between your ears and your shoulders, an invitation to soften between the eyebrows and relax the jaw. We'll start with the ancient blueprint of the yogi text, where it talks about the passageways of our nostrils. So the left nostril flows with Ida, which is our cool, lunar, restorative energy, and the right with the Pingala, which is warm, solar activating energy. Science now shows us that our autonomic nervous system oscillates every 90 minutes between parasympathetic and sympathetic dominance. So that's like our active on the go response and our rest and digest. So it's a beautiful dance in our nervous system that is really a language without words. It's that felt vibe. It's that ah at the end of the day. So I'm excited to tie this the breath and the mouth and the nervous system together because the mouth, Katie can tell us, is a storybook. Every crack, every clench, the dryness, the tension tells us how the nervous system has been coping. And the breath is the narrator. So we're going to reflect on the forgotten art of nasal breathing. We're going to talk about how normalized mouth breathing is and the dental and emotional impacts. And I just want to, Katie, I feel like this is a great place for you to jump in. Like, what's happening here?
Yeah. So when we, as dental practitioners, when we're looking in a mouth, there's two main types of disease that we're looking for, right? So as hygienists, of course, we specialize in gum disease, and periodontitis and gingivitis and all of the layers or levels of gum disease really are impacted by mouth breathing. Specifically, when our tissues are really dried out, it is really hard for our body's immune system to fight off bacteria and fight off disease, especially because in the saliva we have so many pieces of our immune response. So when that's not there, we don't have that active immune response as well. So with dry mouth, you also have risk for that extreme gingival inflammation, super fiery red gums, and gums that bleed really easily. Another thing that the dental profession in general really looks at is caries or dental decay rates. And again, same thing with the saliva protects your teeth. And so people that breathe through their mouth all the time, because they have dry tissues, they are not as protected against caries. So we have increased risk of caries, we have increased risk of periodontal diseases. We also have just plain halitosis, which is bad breath. Our saliva does so much good for us. And it keeps our mouth fresh, and you're less likely to have bad breath.
in our minds, we think that when we mouth breathe, we're getting more oxygen in. But the truth is, actually, when we're properly nasal breathing, we're producing more nitric oxide in our paranasal sinuses, which increases our vasodilation. So we're getting actually 20% more oxygen when we're breathing through our nose versus our mouth. But it's like, these airways are so tiny. How can that be? But what happens is the mouth breathing bypasses that nitrous oxide production. And that's where that dry mouth is coming in, the acidic pH, and that higher caries risk. It's really phenomenal. But then what happens, and you probably can speak a little bit more to this, is that we kind of collapse our nasal passageways when we're not using them. And in come sleep apnea and restrictions. So then when you are trying to breathe through your nose, you're like, I'm not getting enough oxygen. And one of the biggest things about oxygen is when we're not getting enough oxygen, it's an automatic trigger to our brain to like stress out and have anxiety, saying, alert, alert, we don't have enough oxygen. So can you talk to a little bit about the nasal constriction that happens when we mouth breathe, and then how we can kind of work through a little bit of rebuilding that nasal passage if we are mouth breathers?
Yeah. This starts so young, and I speak from parental experience. All three of my kids are in myofunctional therapy right now for this exact same reason. Myofunctional therapy is becoming such a hot topic, and I believe it's from more awareness of this. But even as a young child, when we're developing our craniofacial structures, if we are not breathing correctly, it can impact the way we develop, right? We can have really small maxillas. Our passages are tight, they're very constricted. And the best way I can kind of explain this, because most people have gone through ortho, right, is that your tongue is a natural retainer. So it's supposed to be when you're sleeping right up against the palate, and it creates this spacer for your palate to develop this nice wide base. And when that doesn't happen as children, if we're mouth breathing as children, that's you're going to have really narrow palates and narrow passageways. So this awareness and this kind of uptick of myofunctional therapy awareness and what myofunctional therapy can do is so wild to see. Even just the developmental changes. My kids have had spacers on for probably about 6 months. To see the developmental changes just in their craniofacial features has been crazy. But I really do think it starts at a young age. Once those features are developed, right, it's really hard to change your development. But even as adults, learning how to keep your tongue on the roof of your mouth when you sleep. And again, I know we're talking about nasal breathing, but that really does do it. We need to be sleeping with our mouths closed, and the natural position of your tongue when your mouth is closed should be right up there on the top of that palate. So if you are a parent, absolutely check your kiddos out of how they're just naturally doing this. And myofunctional therapists are specialized in this training and can help you sort of determine best courses of action of how to develop that. But even for adults with sleep apnea is related to so many different systemic diseases. And so not being able to sleep, like you were talking about, like your oxygen, when you're depleted of oxygen, your body triggers you. Well, that's what sleep apnea is, right? It's your body waking you up to breathe in the middle of the night. And you might not even be aware of it. You're just waking up, going back to sleep. But when you do that, you're becoming sleep deprived. It just truly impacts your body as a whole. So the development of the craniofacial features really needs to be addressed at an early age, so that way those breathing passages develop how they should be developed.
It's so fascinating. My experience with this, actually, when I learned about the mouth breathing and the effects of mouth breathing on our overall health, came from a dentist. And I was like, that is so fascinating. He wanted to know why our oral health had such an impact on our overall health. And of course, right, when we've got those bloody gums, we're going to be getting more infections because we have those open sores. So I started down, and I remember when he's like, you should tape your mouth shut to sleep. And I'm like, excuse me. No, thank you. I'm thinking of imagining like a big piece of duct tape over my mouth, and that was not going to happen. But luckily, he went to explain, it's just a tiny little piece of tape that you can just medical tape from here to here. They actually make mouth tape that goes like this, and it's been effective. I wake up with my mouth not feeling so icky. Like just that scuzz is way
Mhm.
less in the morning. And then most recently, I kind of have a whole, this is where we're going to go into the jaw stuff next, but like I have my mouth guard so I don't clench too much. But I just got these intake breather nose strips.
Mhm.
Wow, what a game changer. Literally, they're little, like you put a little sticker magnets on your nostrils, and then it's this little bridge piece that holds them open. And the better sleep, like I'm already not a caffeine drinker, but I'm like, I feel really good. It's so exciting. And it's just these little minor changes that have such big impact. So
Mhm.
I'm excited to dive into a little bit more.
So another product, I guess you could say, so those nasal strips are awesome. My myofunctional therapist recommended them for my kids. But another product that if you struggle with even being able to breathe through your nose would be like a nose spray, like a nasal spray. Specifically, the one that I use is called X Clear, and it has xylitol in it. And so that xylitol is a sugar that bacteria, it's a natural sugar, but bacteria can't metabolize it. So it's very, very good for that whole area, nasal cavity, the back of the oropharynx. And since my kids have been using it, again, they're not as stuffy all the time. They use it right before they go to bed, and it's just really helps keep it moist. It helps them kind of clear everything out. It's almost like a saline, but with the xylitol in it, it does help quite a bit.
One more question I have is what about head positioning when we're sleeping? How can we keep those passageways supported to where we're not getting into that sleep apnea, snoring, alerting ourselves, waking up, and getting that quality sleep?
So it's interesting because I think I read somewhere, and I don't know what the science behind this is, but like the most healthy position to sleep in is like on your back. But I know a lot of people with sleep apnea have like lazy tongues or big, big tongues. So when they sleep on their back, they snore and their tongue sort of closes off their airway and they can't. I am not definitely not qualified to like make any specific recommendations, but if that is happening, I know there's mouthpieces that can sort of bring your jaw forward when you sleep. I would highly recommend if you are sort of in that boat, just try to get evaluated by a myofunctional therapist to see what your options are. And if that's not an option to you, side sleeping may not be the best, but then at least, your tongue isn't going to be relaxed and kind of falling into that airway. Those would be my recommendations.
Okay, and I have another question, and it has to do with that sleep apnea, CPAP machines. Now, CPAP
Mm-hmm.
machines are kind of a forced air intake. Do they help
Yes.
keep your mouth shut? And what happen? They don't. Okay.
No.
And then what happens when we become dependent on these CPAP machines? Like, I know some people will get these face masks and then it crushes the bridge of their nose while forcing more air in. Are we doing more harm than good? What's your take on this? What do you see in patients?
I'm just speaking from my experience of seeing patients that use CPAPs. Their mouth tissues are so dry. They're so dry. And it may help them with obviously not being oxygen depleted. So they're probably getting better sleep, but it really does not have any impact in improvement on the oral cavity. And in my anecdotal experience, it makes it way worse. Their mouths are still really, really dry. And some patients really love them. Some patients hate them and take them off in the middle of the night. They don't use them. Again, I hate to keep bringing this up, but again, that's the whole goal behind myofunctional therapy is to train your body and train your muscles. It's literally physical therapy for your mouth, essentially, or like speech therapy, we teach children how to use their lips and their tongue and stuff. It's the same idea. To me, it's a more holistic approach because you're training your structures, you're training your muscles how to properly work together. And so if you can sort of train your body and then look at other, so there's other coexisting factors for sleep apnea. One of them is obesity. It is also related to heart disease and all of those coexisting things. When we think about metabolic syndrome, most of these things are very closely linked. So there may be some other, health issues or health habits that we need to look at in order to like holistically look at this. But myofunctional therapy, in my opinion, is more holistic than a CPAP. A CPAP solves a problem, and it's not a bad thing. If you heavily rely on a CPAP, I would not tell you to stop. I'm not a doctor, but I do think that it does not solve the problem of the oral having your mouth open while you're sleeping.
I thank you for that explanation. I'm very much a root cause type, right? Let's not treat what's going wrong. Let's figure out what's causing what's going wrong. So I appreciate your experiential input into that. And now my question to all of our listeners is, are you still breathing? Right? When you take the shoulders up, roll them down, that softening between the eyebrows and relaxing the jaw. And kind of a segue here is I compare these are the differences between mouth breathing, right, and the power of nasal breathing. I'm just going to read through this real quick because I don't have it all memorized, but I want to hit that on these points. So when we are mouth breathing, that is the number one sign, red flag, like this person's stressed, right? And so we can chronically develop it and not even know that we're doing it. As Katie mentioned, it dries the oral cavities. It aggravates our inflammation, and stress is going to increase our inflammation just as much as sugar. So when we're trying to talk about anti-inflammatory, that's where shifting in to the nasal breathing, right? Are you doing it with me? Right, that power of nasal breathing. So the other issues I think she's touched on a little bit is with the mouth breathing is the grinding, clenching, TMJ, which is going to be a whole nother episode, and I'm very, very excited about it. But it also goes into that restriction, contributing to the forward head posture, kind of getting that tech neck, and creating an airway restriction. So then we have this underlying baseline of anxiety because our brain is like, we're not aligned properly, we're not getting the right breath.
So when you said like forward head posture, that's why that develops, because you're so restricted in your airway. Your literally body is like reaching for breath. And when they evaluate for myofunctional therapy, they look at head posture and they take pictures before and after. And it's wild to see the change of that neck posture going back.
So we know that Katie's speaking from like a very experiential point because she is not a myofascial therapist. She's not
No,
paid
I'm
or
not.
promoted to say go see a myofascial therapist. And neither were any of the products. Like we're not paid to promote those. Those are just things that we have found. I want to go see a myofascial therapist because I've struggled with these things, mouth breathing, the dry mouth. So some of these questions are like, I've experienced this. What else can I do?
Just from the hygiene perspective, it's like we're training our students now to look for these things so that way we can refer them on, because these are things that we see all the time, even as little kids. And so now that we can see them, we can refer on to those myofunctional therapists to start this early.
And I love how you use the word see, because so often trauma is what they call an invisible wound. And really, it's actually very visible when you're trained to know what to look for, that it's like, no, it's right there. You can see it. And I'm so excited that that is the wave of education that's coming through. And again, it's just that this trauma-informed practices are going to be a snowballed way of the future, common practice place. And it's very exciting time to be in this, really bringing it to everybody and saying, let's slow down, let's breathe, let's look. The other part that talks about that mouth breathing is that when it changes our posture, it's also affecting our diaphragm. So many of us reverse breathe, as we talked a little bit in our intro session, where it's like, okay, can we actually expand through the belly when we're breathing instead of pulling our belly button in on the inhale? And it takes a mental shift, but it is part of that alignment. So when we're talking about the physiological power of nasal breathing, we are really talking about activating that nitric oxide production so you actually get 20% more oxygen from smaller nasal passages. That's so crazy. It's filtering the air, it's humidifying the air, so it's getting away from that dryness. It supports this diaphragm so you can breathe properly and bring your head back. If you carry, a lot of us women carry our stress in our shoulders. It's these muscles are tight because of our forward head posture and our mouth breathing. And when we can relax back into it, it feels funny, a little bit like, oh my gosh, I'm really pushing my chest out there. But it's like, actually, that's normal, right? So in embodiment, I love Tony Robbins. He'll talk about like the superhero pose when you're trying to, if you're going to go talk in front of people, like standing like this for a little bit. And that's what it is. It's standing in our proper alignment. So if you have a few moments, I invite you to maybe stand up and see what that is and to expand through the belly when you're breathing and bringing those shoulders back without cranking them down, right? But just the lengthening and just seeing what that posture shift does for you. It allows for you to relax the jaw and that all those muscles in the face and neck. And then we're going to actually reduce our sympathetic activation, which is that fight, flight, freeze, fawn. There are others. um, and then we're gonna get better sleep. Like I'm already out of my little magnets for my nose thing, but I'm like I'm hooked. I'm gonna do that. So that's a little bit about where I'm at with breath. If we want to shift in to maybe a practice, or do you have any other inputs on the diaphragmatic breathing, nasal versus mouth breathing? Where are you at today, Katie?
I might just add that as practitioners, so dental practitioners, if you notice, I talked about this a couple episodes ago when we talked about those trauma responses. This is practices that you can do. Chelsea's going to talk us through like a short breathing exercise, but not only will you take that patient out of their fight and flight, but you're going to make them more present and make them more aware of what's going on. Again, just taking them out of that trauma response. So these are things that you can do as a practitioner with your patients. It's not going to take long, right? I think you said, is this practice that we're going to do like 90 seconds? Is that right? Did I read that?
So you can do it as little as 90 seconds. Our practices today will probably be like 3 to 5 minutes. But the
Okay.
goal is to realize how quickly we can make that switch. I think, and so many people are like, oh, I don't want to go do an hour of yoga class. I'm a yoga instructor and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so much, right? But being able to do it in the moment and having that like that switch, right? And heart rate variability, and it's a sign of resilience when we can be activated and then name it like my heart rate is beating fast. I'm a little
Yeah.
shaky, my palms are sweaty, my thoughts are rapid. And if you can name that in the moment, you're going to do what the psychology says is name it to tame it. You're like, okay, I'm here, I'm with it in the moment. And then you wait, you follow your breath, and then you'll feel that switch. So I do hope to take us through that today for sure.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. And I just think that for our dental practitioners listening, like this is something that you could do with your patients. This is an actual example of how you can co-regulate with your patients. If you notice them in a trauma response, you can help them identify it, say, what are you feeling right now? And then just ask them to breathe with you or ask them again to nasal breathe specifically, talk them through it. So I'm excited for Chelsie to sort of introduce this and walk through a practice with you because I think that this is something we could use chairside. It's also interesting because this can actually reduce gag reflex as well. So, like, say you have a patient that's really struggling in that gag reflex, you can actually talk them through this, and it may even reduce that a little bit. So, Chelsie, go ahead and just show us how it's done.
Yes, thank you so much. I love this. So the invitation, of course, right, is to close our mouths. And inviting in, you'll find that joy and laughter because when we're in trauma, the opposite of trauma is actually play. So inviting that playfulness, that curiosity as we settle in here, like, okay, no expectations. We're dropping the expectations at the door. And we're going to breathe in through our nose, counting to 4. And we're feeling the air cool and expand behind the heart. And then we're going to exhale through the nose for a count of 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, with an invitation to soften the jaw, the shoulders, and the pelvic floor. Following your breath in again. 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale for 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale again, whispering internally, I am safe, to soften. Exhale for 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And adding a bit of somatic awareness, option to put your hand on your belly and your heart and really breathe into the belly expansively. 4, 3, 2, 1. Belly is gently rising, expanding through the ribs. Exhale through the nose. 6, 5. Belly draws in, jaw softens. 2, 1. Inhale again, expansively, up, down, side to side, front and back. And exhale, whispering, I breathe in clarity. On that next inhale, breathing in that clarity. Exhaling, I breathe out ease. Feeling the support beneath your feet, beneath your seat, sitting up tall, ears elongated away from the shoulders, shoulders stacked over the hips, following your breath. Feeling your body align with safety in each moment. And when we can feel safe and regulated in our own bodies, our neurons have a mirroring radiant effect. So as you regulate internally, you can regulate the room around you. Their neurons are going to reflect yours. So when you can take these times, breathe in for a count of 4, lengthen your exhale to a count of 6 or even 8, you're intentionally activating that parasympathetic nervous system that says, I am safe. It is okay. I am here. And then just taking a moment to notice how you feel. I think that was like 3 minutes.
I feel really good. And that was a practice with Chelsie. Next week on the episode, we're going to be talking all about jaw tension, clenching and grinding, and all of those things that might implicate some trauma and some health issues. So stay tuned. Thank you for joining in on the series, and we will see you next week.